Welcome to the Nonprofit Founders Club, where founders who have said, I have my 501c3, now what? Begins building the nonprofit they envisioned and helping the people they are called to serve, all without being the sole funder. Bobby is a Harvard Law grad turned entrepreneur who built a thriving multiple six-figure business selling the most boring thing ever, legal templates, primarily through email. In this process, his emails have built a cult following because they're actually fun to read. Bobby is my business coach. Yes, even I need a coach and mentor. And I have asked him on today to share his insights to email and how the nonprofit can use it. Nonprofit work, we often look to our for-profit counterparts for information and inspiration, so I'm happy to welcome Bobby to share his knowledge. Email is one of the cheapest ways to connect and engage with people who like your organization. So catch all the nuggets in this episode and listen for the very special offer to you and you only, my audience, starting May 3rd and running for a limited time. All right. Welcome, Bobby, to the Nonprofit Founders Club.
Well, thank you for having me, Alicia. I'm looking forward to this. By the way, this is the first of the interviews I'm doing as part of my virtual book tour. So you get the honor, I guess, of being kind of the first show where I'm doing one of these interviews. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, awesome. You are actually my second interview ever on this podcast.
Okay.
And the first one that's outside of the nonprofit world. So that's kind of cool.
Well, that'll be fun. This will be fun, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So you have a book called Email Marketing That Doesn't Suck.
Yep.
And we're recording this kind of in the past from where this is going to come out. So it's kind of hard to talk about stuff. But is it May 8th your book will be out?
May 3rd. By the way, I always love that in podcasts. I'm always like, what tense am I in? I'm in future past tense or something weird like that. That's what we have to do. But yeah.
Okay,
so it's my birthday. We decided, books traditionally come out on Tuesdays. This year, my birthday, May 3rd, happened to be a Tuesday. I said, what better birthday present to myself could I do than to release my book?
Oh, so this is awesome because this podcast is actually scheduled for May 3rd.
Well, there you go.
And it's a bonus episode. So that's pretty cool.
Great. Awesome.
So, tell us about how you went from the boring lawyer to the rebel online entrepreneur, because it's a great story.
So, the reality is I was always I was always the rebel. Growing up, I was always that kid, the really annoying kid. I feel sorry for my teachers. I was the kid who, whether I was sitting in the front or the back, I was causing trouble. I was asking questions. I was, raising my hand. I was kind of like that kid who would sit there on the top of the desk, swinging his feet back and forth, and the teachers would get annoyed with it. Now, I got away with it because I was smart, and so I could manage to keep up even when I didn't pay full attention. But then I went to law school, and I lost my way in law school in a sense. And what I mean by that is, I started law school thinking that I was gonna go to the ACLU. That was my dream, realistically, because I appreciated the things that they stood for when it came to free speech and ideas like that. And so that's what I thought. But then the allure of money got me. And so I went after law school, went to big law firms where I put on a suit and acted like a lawyer. And it always felt off to me. And it was this journey of about, 15 years to try to finally figure out what it was that was wrong. At first, I thought it was I just wanted more discrete tasks like that were fun to do. And then I thought it was, no, I want responsibility to manage a case. But eventually it hit me. I just wasn't built to be a lawyer. And I was a litigator. So I spent my days fighting with people all the time. And Alicia, you know me well enough to know that although I could have like intellectual discussions where I'm disagreeing with people, like just literally fighting with people about dumb stuff would just drain me. And so I was doing that. And then in 2016 or 2017, I was working with a life coach because I was just kind of feeling about things. And I guess we could call it my early midlife crisis, if you will. But so that's where I was. And the life coach finally asked, do you like what you do for a living? And after stammering for a while, I said no. And so then she asked what I call the ultimate question, which is, well, what are we going to do about that? And so that was the start of what's now been a 5-year journey into online entrepreneurship. And she was the one who originally said, I could see you going on to podcasts and radio shows for entrepreneurs and offering kind of legal education, legal information, legal tips and training. And she said that, and we would meet every other week. And by the time, like from that call to the next call, I had signed up with a podcast booking agency and they'd committed to book me. I think it was like 40 shows. I mean, it was a lot. I went all in on it. Even though at that point I had no business idea. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, sure, why not? I'll go do stuff. And so that was 2017. And at that point, my emails were non-existent, really. But I started building my list. And as I did, my emails still kind of sucked. I mean, no one really would want to read them. They were just boring. They had no personality. They seemed like they were coming from just nowadays you'd almost think, an AI bot wrote those things, kind of a thing. And so it was just that kind of thing where it was like, in this week's episode of my podcast, we're talking about. It was kind of that and a summary. But what happened was in August of 2018, I was at an event with 400 other online entrepreneurs. And it was this event that we'd been in an online group together for, I don't know, at that point, 6 months or so. And I had built up a reputation as kind of someone who just helped all the time and whose star had kind of risen. We'd all started in this group with like kind of no businesses online at all. And then all of a sudden I had built this thing in that 6 months. And so I went to this event and it was kind of funny. I was a bit of a star. And separately, though, I was working at that point with the person who was hosting the event. I was helping her in her business with legal stuff. And so I took a selfie with her number 2, kind of like the COO for her business. And this woman, like unbeknownst to me, was photobombing me from behind, sticking her tongue out. And this is someone who like once you get to know her, that's her personality. But for most of the world, she seems like she's just a very kind of not that kind of person, not a wacky person at all. And so I got back to my room that night, and that was the first time I looked at my pictures and discovered what had happened and sent the photobomb. And so I live in Washington, D.C., but this event was in California. So it's already, 11 or 12 at night in California. When I get back to my room, I see this picture, and I just started laughing, and I was like, who am I going to tell about this? So I texted it to my wife. Not thinking, it was way after she would have been asleep. Well, I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and I get this response from her, just, one line. Why are you sending me pictures of you with random women? And I was like, oh, yeah. She knows that I'm doing work for this woman, Amy, but she has no idea who she is or what she looks like. And so to her, I'm just sending her pictures of me having this wonderful time with random women. And so I smoothed it out. But then that day at the event, I was telling someone this, and she looks at me and said, I think we know what your next email needs to be. Because there was a presentation at the event about how you should tell stories in email. And so I bit the bullet, and my next email to my list, I told them that story. And again, the subject line was in quotes, why are you sending me pictures of you with random women? And I don't remember. I think I said, hey, in this week's episode of the podcast, we talked about that. But before that, I got to tell you this story about how I managed to stay married even after my wife texted me, that. And so I told the story. And when I did, for the first time ever, people like literally responded. They hit reply and replied to my email. Mm-hmm. And they were all good. People loved it. People were just thinking it was hilarious. And so I like to say that I'm like Pavlov's dogs. I'm very trainable. And so if I get good positive reinforcement, I lean in. And so I did. And the next week, I don't remember what the email was, but it was another one of these kind of stories that I was just telling about my life. And after that email, I got a response from someone who said something like, I've been on your list for a long time now, but for the first time, I feel like you're a human being, not a company. And for the first time, I actually want to do business with you. And that was like, ding, 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 ding. Bobby has an idea. And so that was the start. And since then, I've kind of just leaned into being me. And I've gone from selling legal templates, which I still do, but legal templates for online business owners, become a business coach, and just helping people. What I like to say is build an authentic business, but really what it's about is about building connection. I like to say that I'm teaching people online to build a business kind of like the general store owner would in a small town, where the people in your world, you take care of them, you care for them, and you know that they're going to care for you in return. And so that kind of connection has become the key to what I do with email. And since then, I've started teaching people how to write emails, and people have learned it. People have loved it. And I think it's taken the fear out of writing email from people.
Yeah. Being authentic to build that connection is so important. I know nonprofits, they like to be corporate because they think that's how it's supposed to be. But even a corporation can have a voice, have a personality.
Right. Well, and that's funny because like a lot of people, so look, my book and the people that I'm talking to tend to be people like me who are building what I call knowledge brands or knowledge businesses. So they are selling a service or a product that's based upon information or kind of their expertise. But what I tell people is I've seen not true product companies, but a product company can do it. But I've seen software companies who do the same kinds of things. They're establishing rapport with you, with showing the personality of the brand. And then even if you think about big brands, and we don't realize it, but big corporate brands, they're actually, maybe they don't do it with email so much, but they have a personality. When you think of the personality of Apple versus the personality of
Microsoft.
IBM. Yeah, Microsoft. I mean, just think about those ads from when was it? Early 2000s of the guy who was the Apple guy who was kind of loose and fun, and then the guy in a tie, and so there is a personality for every brand, and what people don't realize is that's what people ultimately connect with, and that's what makes a lot of their buying decisions for them is this identity. And let me be clear, nonprofits, in my view, are way closer to my kinds of business of knowledge brands where the connection in a lot of ways matters. I mean, I'm not on any nonprofit boards, but there are nonprofits that I give to on a regular basis. And it's because I feel a connection to the cause.
Right.
And so to me, that this connection is a big piece of what your audience is trying to accomplish or should be trying to accomplish at least.
Right. And since we're talking founders, they can use what you're doing because right now they are the face, they are the voice, they are the vision, they are everything in the nonprofit.
Exactly. And that's like with the businesses I talk to, that's what I kind of tell them. I say, look, when you're starting, you are the business, you are the brand and you like the brand personality and your personality are the same. With all of us, we'll go through evolutions. And at some point, if our business grows or if your nonprofit grows enough, it will grow beyond being just your personality. But let's be clear, hopefully you're going to attract other people who have a similar personality. So it's not like, for example, because I'm naturally a rebel, I couldn't have a company that was really a very traditional corporate feel. I wouldn't want to run that business. And so you're going to have something like that, but it will eventually grow beyond you. But starting out, you are the brand. You are the nonprofit.
Right. So you and I actually have a few things in common. And one of them is purpose. We believe that we should be doing things with purpose. Strategy is what you call it, but it's still purpose. And if you've been in my world for any length of time, you know that if you don't have a purpose for what you're doing, it's called busy work, and we don't have time for that.
Yep.
So what purpose do you see the email marketing having in business, no matter if it's for profit or nonprofit?
So to me, I mean, email can serve a lot of different roles, but really to me, the underlying most powerful purpose of email is in building connection. That is what I think people who are using it well are doing with it the most. And what I mean is we get used to this. And I think the problem is a lot of people have modeled their email marketing after what they see from big brands. And by big brands, I mean people like Old Navy and that kind of company. Well, let's be clear. I don't really want a connection with Old Navy, right? So if I'm on their email list, it's because they're going to tell me about a deal. And so I think a lot of people thought that's how email should be used. Whether it's, hey, we're having a sale, or if you're a founder for a nonprofit, hey, we're doing a fundraise. And you can use it for that. There's no question email serves a purpose for that. But what I found, and I think what drew people to me initially, and not just about email, but about my business coaching, is that it seemed to them that when I got to the point of asking people for money, it seemed easy and effortless for me. And the reason why is because I'd done the hard work before of building a connection. And so to me, that's what you can do with email. And you do it by telling stories, by teaching little lessons, and kind of giving people a sense of what you stand for and what you're like. And when you do that, all of a sudden they start to view you, in my case, as a friend. Now, for a nonprofit, maybe they view you, the founder, as a friend, but they also then view themselves as being kind of aligned and having the same mission as you. And again, now, Alicia, you're going to know more about nonprofits than me, but I suspect that if your audience feels like they have a shared mission with you, when it comes time to ask them for money, to take any kind of action, it's going to be much easier than if you're just trying to solicit people cold.
Yeah, that's true. And really what donors want is to make a difference. Mm-hmm. They want that purpose, mm-hmm. that bigger connection. And so that's why they align with you, is because they see that you are the ones making that difference.
Yep.
You're on the front lines.
Yep, exactly.
And so,
again, it's this, like I said, it's not the exact same thing, but it's the same general thing that's happening in business when I'm talking to other business owners, because the people who are drawn to me are the people who share my values. And I have values like being a radical giver and making business accessible to people, even people who can't afford, some of the expenses of a lot of the other programs. And so as a result, guess what? I attract those kinds of people into my audience. And the way I talk about business, as you've commented multiple times, Alicia, is actually real business knowledge, not the get rich quick hacks, tricks, that a lot of people are talking about. And guess what? That means I actually attract a lot of people who have business experience in real businesses. And so the way that you talk throughout emails and everything like that, it aligns your audience and will help to attract the people who are going to be your ideal, in your case, donors, contributors, supporters, and also ambassadors and people who will talk about your nonprofit to other people. And that has power too.
Yeah, that can be one of the most powerful advertising, marketing things, is just the word of mouth, because people who, and I think you even talk about this in the book, people will go to other brands when a trusted friend has told them about it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what I say is that in some sense, the way you should approach everything about email is like you're emailing a friend. And that I think there's a couple of values that. Number one, I think it takes the pressure off, because you don't feel like your email has to be perfect. Because I don't know about you, Alicia, but when I email friends, I mean, I'm sure there's even more typos than there are in the emails that I send to my list, and so I don't worry about those things. I don't worry about it being perfect. I'm just kind of, telling them what I'm thinking, what's on my mind. And the other benefit is exactly what you identified, is that people start to feel like you are their friend. And so then when you recommend something, in this case, your product, it feels more like a recommendation from a friend than someone random from the internet or random from the nonprofit world trying to get them to give money. It'll just feel like a friend talking to them in a genuine way.
Right. So another thing that we have in common is that we believe in building relationships. And we've kind of touched on this already. I stress building relationships with donors and not treating them as ATM machines. And so, Bobby, you talk about building relationships with customers through email marketing in your book. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us more about how to use email to build relationships? I know we've kind of touched on that.
Yep. So, what I would say is, number one, this isn't just about email marketing. And this is a broader point that marketing itself is about relationships. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is that when you do that, when you treat people as people. Mm-hmm. In my case, I think, it's not a subscriber, it's not a lead, it's not a potential wallet, it's a person. And so there's a couple of things that come with that. Number one, when I'm writing my emails, I'm thinking about people. And so I'm only going to send an email if I think it's going to be valuable to my people. Now, that was one of the big shifts I made. So, and the value, to be clear, a lot of times the value that I think I'm bringing with emails is I bring a smile to people's face. I make them chuckle. And in today's day and age, I feel like, hey, if I can give you 5 minutes of joy, that in and of itself is a service I've provided to you. Mm-hmm. But other things I do, and again, people think I'm really weird in this space. And this isn't the outbound emails, and it's been funny, Alicia, like as I've been talking to people and sending emails to people I know about potentially coming on their podcast and doing these things, I'll have people respond back, assuming they're talking to my team. And I'm like, no, you're talking to Bobby. You're not talking to my team. Now, at various times, I will have team members who sort and sift my emails. But by sort and sift, that means, they get rid of the random transactional stuff. They get those things out of there. And if there's a question that is clearly a support question, they'll jump in and take care of it. Because quite honestly, if I try to answer a support question, I'm more likely to give you bad advice rather than good advice. But I'm the one who answers emails. And so I try my best. And as my business and demands on my time have grown, it's gotten harder, but I still try to respond to people when they send me an email. Now, if they respond to one of my emails with just a really short, hey, that was great. I respond with a similarly short, hey, thanks for letting me know, right? Something like that. But if someone takes the time to respond to one of my emails with multiple paragraphs about how it touched them and how it was the message they needed to hear right now, et cetera, I'm going to respond with a thoughtful response too. And again, to me, like people say, but you can't do that at scale. And I said, yes. If every one of my subscribers started doing that, I couldn't do it. You're right. But you don't get that from, every one of your subscribers. But I simply say that is a person who has chosen to share something with me. And it's almost always they're sharing something about themselves, about their life, and many times about what they're struggling with and how they're struggling right now. And the way I like to think of it is, forget being a marketer, forget being an online marketer. If a human being came up to me and was having this conversation, it was someone that I had initiated a conversation, right? Because I had sent them something first, and then they responded this way. Would I ignore them? No, I would respond. And to me, I think the fact that I do that is part of why people feel connected to me, because I come across as a human being. And it's just weird, but in today's day and age, with everything, whether it's for nonprofit founders, for companies, for businesses, for online marketing, being a human being and treating people like human beings is one of the biggest differentiators there is. And like I said, I think we could all learn from that, because people will feel so connected to me. I have so many people, by the way, who are on my email list who, like, when they got on my email list, they were going to build a business, but they've stopped. But they still just want to be in my world. They want to be connected to me, even though what I'm talking about now has no relevance to their life, but because they feel like it's a way to connect with me. And again, that to me is a powerful thing, partly because, it's powerful on the ripple effect I can have on the world, but also from just from a very kind of crass capitalistic standpoint. Yeah, maybe that person's not going to buy from me, but you know what? If they know someone in their life who could use my services, guess what? They're definitely one of the people who's going to tell everybody they know to buy from me. And so there's value in doing these things and doing it right. And in your case, with a nonprofit, they're going to tell other people about your mission, about your cause, about how you are building a wonderful nonprofit that they should support.
Right. And I'm one of those people that replied to one of your emails thinking, oh, let's see who responds, and was totally shocked when it was you that, and it took me a long time to buy from you. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I became a brand ambassador. I was in Facebook groups, and I'm still in Facebook groups. And anytime email comes up or anytime building a business comes up, I'm like, oh, you've got to know this guy.
And that's one of the other things. Like I think, and my view on marketing is slightly different. So if founders, I'm going to give you a little quick tutorial here. There's this concept known. It used to be funnels, but now people think of it as like a cycle where owners go through it. And so they become aware of you, then they engage with you, then they buy from you, then you give them stuff to wow them, then they buy from you again. And only then, in traditional marketing lore, are they likely to become a brand ambassador. I've said for years now, I don't know how long, probably at least 2 years, probably 3 years, that I think that's the dumbest advice out there. That you can create brand ambassadors out of people who've never bought from you. If you treat them right, if you show them the right approach. And in your cases with nonprofit, maybe it's people who they're not in a position to really be able to donate or donate maybe more than just, a nominal sum. But you know what? They might know people. And if you treat them right, they might be able to talk to, their friends who they know actually are looking to get behind a cause, or they'll just talk you up generally. And if they have the same mission and the same cause that you do, they're likely to be around other people who have that same mission and same cause. So they'll just be talking about you. And guess what that does? All of these things of kind of virality and all that can happen if you just treat people the right way.
Right. And you never know who you can turn into a volunteer either. Right. And nonprofits always need that extra manpower. And so, ambassadors often become volunteers. And guess what? Volunteers often become donors. Right. So you've got that continuous cycle going. Yep. So you mentioned in your book that your methodology comes from principles of marketing, psychology, and messaging. Mm-hmm. So why do you think that combination works for a wide variety of industries?
So because fundamentally, fundamentally everything we do in life is messaging. And some people could say that everything we do is marketing. And by that, I mean, not just in our professional lives, even in your personal lives, in a lot of ways, what you're doing is kind of a marketing approach. And the way I look at marketing, there, I know this definition, Alicia. I mean, the American Marketing Association has a very convoluted message about what marketing is. But to me, I say that marketing is making the right offer to the right person at the right time with the right message. And that's applicable to everything. That's applicable to your life. That's applicable to business. But there's a lot of pieces in there, which is you have to know and be willing to take the time to understand what is right for this person and what's the right message that will actually get them to convert, but also what's the right time, which is about understanding kind of the psychology and all of these things. But it's really not that hard. I mean, a lot of people make it very complicated. And I joke that I listen to people who are talking about email marketing, and I'll never forget one of the bigger companies in the digital space, at least, that has a bunch of different courses, and they had like an academy, and I signed up for it, and it's like a membership. And then I went into their email marketing, and the first lesson was like the guy explaining why he's an authority and why you should listen. And he started by saying, "I know all the tricks to get people to open your email." I said, "I'm out." Because you shouldn't have to trick people. No. if you're relying on tricks, I mean, and again, there's a fine line. I play tricks on my audience from time to time, but I'm not trying to trick them. And there's a fine line there, and I think it's an intent one. But I guess my point is that if you just again, know the psychology of basic things. And what I like to say is use the golden rule. Think about how you would want to be treated if you were on the list, and treat your people that way. And guess what? There's something behind that. And, am I trained in psychology? No, but I know enough to know that the notion of the golden rule has been around across cultures, across like religious beliefs, across so many different things, because it's a kind of universally accepted, thing about human nature that we want to be treated well. And if someone treats us like we would want to be treated, we're going to like them. If they don't, we're not going to like them. And so why don't we just lean into that?
Right. So let's talk nuts and bolts.
Okay.
What is the journey your subscribers should go on with you in their email?
Yeah. So, and again, so some of this stuff, like some of the stuff that I kind of teach, I'm thinking for your people would be modified slightly, and I have to think about exactly how to do that. But ultimately, what you're doing, in my view, is it comes down to the know, like, and trust factor. So before you ask people to buy from you, I believe you should have established the know, like, and trust factor. And it's interesting. You're not doing it in that order necessarily. You actually start with trust. So the first email that I send to people, and I tell people to send, especially in the typical list building world of an online marketing business where we're going to give a freebie to somebody in exchange for their email list, I say deliver that with what I call the catch email, which it's basically a structure that is used to establish that you understand their pain points. Now, this is what I'm saying. I think I would tweak this one for nonprofits. Instead of understanding their pain points, I think for your cases, I think you need to kind of acknowledge the shared mission. So catch stands for congratulate, acknowledge, this tells me about you, credibility, and hook. So it's a mnemonic device to help you understand the structure of the email. So, I think you guys could do the exact same thing when someone joins your email list for your nonprofit. You would congratulate them on the decision to join. You would acknowledge the shared mission. And in that, the point of that would be to establish common ground. So they say, yep, you know why I'm here. You know what I care about. Then this tells me about you. And by the way, when I say acknowledge there, you're not necessarily saying that they stand for that. You're just acknowledging that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Then this tells me about you, in your case, would be, hey, you joined this list. And that tells me that you're someone who cares about these things deeply, that you care about, again, whatever your mission for your nonprofit is. Then the credibility would be about, why should they listen to you talking about these topics? And then the hook is just something curiosity driven that will make them want to read the next email you're going to send. And so that's kind of that first email. And the point of this really is, and this is where psychology comes in. You can't always your lists or your readers won't necessarily know or care yet whether you have the solution. But if you're able to describe, in my case, the problem that they're struggling with, that leads them to just assume, man, if Bobby really can dial in and nail the problem, he must know the solution, right? It's kind of a subconscious. They're not actually thinking that, but their brain is just doing that. Well, in your case, the same thing. If you're able to state the mission and the challenges that you're going to help, that your nonprofit helps in the world, people, et cetera, and it really aligns with them, there's going to be this, okay, this person knows me, understands why I'm here, and understands what I want in the world. And so then there will be that trust. So that's that first email. From there, I suggest sending what I call a nurture email. And again, this depends on whether someone signed up. If someone just joined your email list, you don't need to do this. If they just signed up for a thing, hey, I want to join your list. But if they join because you gave them something that they're supposed to use, which is more typical, I think, in my business than yours. Is that right, Alicia? I'm guessing most nonprofits wouldn't do that, or would they?
They don't normally do that, but I think it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. And in my case, what I'm teaching people to do is we give people what are called lead magnets, which is, hey, here's a freebie that's going to help you do some stuff in your life, business, whatever it is. And so my nurture sequence I teach people is help them get value from that. number one, make sure they're taking action. Number two, it's making sure that they understand kind of the key points or the key ideas. And the idea really here is to get people into action and get people to start seeing results. In my case, now this is what I'm saying, you would probably need to modify that a bit. Mm-hmm. But I think many nonprofits would move straight to kind of what I think of as the third step, which is your welcome sequence. And the welcome sequence, for lack of a better word, is orientation to your world. This is where you really go deep. And I mean, for you nonprofits, this should be just this should be a showpiece for you and a no-brainer, because you guys know what you stand for. You know the kind of pillars or the core values and the ideas behind and the mission of your business or of your nonprofit. And so in this sequence of emails, you're going to tell people, number one, how did you come to create this thing? What was it that inspired you to create this nonprofit, which in your case would be your kind of origin story of the founding. Mm-hmm. Then you're also going to want to make sure that you have emails that talk about, in your case, the core values or the core missions, or if you have pillars of the things you do and stand for. And in your cases, I would say one email for each one of those, so that they really know what you are doing in the world and can make this decision. Hey, am I aligned with this person or with this nonprofit? You can also do things like, if you have content or a social media channel that you use, that's where you would talk about it and introduce them and encourage them to follow you, support you, share things, etc., engage with you. You do this in the welcome sequence. And then another piece that you want to do is help them understand how they can help you. So again, for a business, normally be, how can I help you? And help them understand the things that they can buy from me. But in your case, you want to have a call to action of ways that they can help the nonprofit make progress. And think outside the box here. Yes, some of it could be making donations, but as Alicia talked about earlier, it could be being a volunteer. If you need volunteer help with stuff, that could be a call to action. Just help them know, how could they get involved? How can they take the next step with you as a nonprofit, so that when they're done with this sequence, they know who you are, what you stand for, and how they can help. And again, some people may leave. Some people may decide, hey, well, I don't really agree with all the stuff that this nonprofit stands for. And if so, okay. But I'm guessing in your case, because most people will know these things before they get on it, it'll simply cement the relationship. Then after they get done with that, that's when they'll start getting your weekly emails. They'll start just getting an email every week where you share something of value with them. And part of the value here is a story, but the key idea here is that these emails are meant to build connection between you and your audience. And so you'll have some kind of hook, which is the subject line normally, which will be something curiosity driven or something that will make them want to open and read the email. Then the story of some sort. Then from there, you're going to have a mix of a couple things, but you're going to basically have a call to action, which could be any number of things. It could be, hey, go check out my social media. It could be, if you're creating content, go listen to my podcast, go read a blog post. It could simply be, hit reply and let me know what you think. Just telling them to do something, and a lesson. You have to have some kind of lesson or idea or message that ties into the story that you're sending. So for me, because I'm usually emailing about my content, the message is something that's in my content, on my podcast or my blog post, whatever I'm emailing about. So that's kind of the underlying message. And then the story links into that. The story somehow connects to that. And I can pull and kind of make a pivot from this story from my personal life to the lesson I want them to get for their business. And you'll want to do something similar in those emails. And those are the bread and butter emails. And spending time getting good at those is one of the most powerful things you can do. And then the last part is, in my world, it's the sales sequence. In your world, it would be the fundraising sequence, I'm guessing. It's where you're making the ask. And those you just do periodically. And Alicia, you know better than me, but I'm guessing you're going to do, there will be ways for people to give you money all the time, but I'm guessing you'll do these kind of very concentrated fundraising efforts in a concentrated period. And in those, you just need to think through the psychology of what are the things that will motivate people to give, which is, talking about the good and the impact that it could have, et cetera.
Right. So I know that you have said something that my people are going to go, oh no. And that's that weekly email. Typically, nonprofits do either once a month or once a quarter because it's just so overwhelming to do that weekly email. But you're not against not doing it quite so frequently. You just want them consistently, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I'm not going to do yes, but I'm going to do yes and. What I'll challenge you is I think most people struggle with those things because they open up something and they have a cursor that's blinking that seems to actually be cursing at them, right? I mean, it's, that blinking cursor on an empty page. And I think the problem is you're putting too much pressure on yourself. What if you simply said, you know what? What if I just told people what's going on this week? And in a very informal, friendly way, told them some little tidbit of something that happened that week. It could be related to your nonprofit or not. And that, I think, is one of the shifts that makes it easier for people. But again, it doesn't have to be weekly, but I'll encourage you that the more that you're willing to email people, the better. But, I think you're right. I think in your audience, maybe, you can throttle it back a bit. But at the same time, I would, again, simply encourage people to understand that the more you build a connection, which is what those emails are about, the easier it's going to be when it comes time for you to ask for money. And the worst thing you can do is if I got on your list and I haven't heard from you in 3 months, and then the first email I'm getting is asking me for money. I mean, again, in your case, maybe, people will give. But Alicia, I mean, I think in our space, I mean, if you do that, I mean, good luck. I mean, why would I buy from you? But I think the same thing in your world, you've missed all this opportunity to have built up goodwill with your audience.
Right. And we always talk about there should be some impact, some thank yous, something in between asks. Mm-hmm. Because just like you said, people, if the only reason you're coming to them is to ask them for money, you're treating them as an ATM and they're done. They're out.
So here's the analogy I draw. Now, I don't know about you, but I think we've all had that friend who you only ever heard from them when they needed help. Maybe it's they needed help moving, maybe it's they needed help. But the only time you ever heard from them is when they were reaching out because they were going to ask you for something. And if you haven't had that experience, well, you're lucky. But most of us have had that experience. And guess what? We don't have that friend anymore. Because at some point, you're like, why? What? I mean, what's in it for me? Look, we are all fundamentally, we'll try to be good people, but fundamentally, we're selfish, right? It's like, well, what's in it for me? And, it's not a good way to do it. And that's the problem of just having the ask. And like I said, I mean, you could come up with other ways to address that. But I simply tell people, if you'll just commit to send these regular, consistent emails that have no purpose other than to find a way to maybe provide some value to people with a story, with something that's happening and connect them with you, then all of a sudden things get much easier when it's time to ask. Right.
So, you talk about email newsletters in your book.
Yep.
And nonprofits have been using them as donor magnets for decades, but they haven't done them well. And so they've been ineffective. Mm-hmm. So how can a nonprofit do their email newsletter better?
So what I'll say is, here's the fundamental problem with a newsletter, and I think it stayed the title of the chapter is, I don't know about a lot of people who've said, woohoo, I got a newsletter. I mean, that's just not how you respond to getting a newsletter, because most of the times it's just going to be, and so it's, again, I mean, there are exceptions, like, maybe if you get your annual or every, twice a year newsletter from your university where you're still connected with people, maybe then you're like, okay, cool, I get to know what's happening there. But most of us, that's not our reaction. And so that's part of the reason why I suggest, instead of doing it as a newsletter style, your core email that you send on a regular basis is a story-based email that isn't a recap of events. And that's the problem. Is like people will just recap various things. And that I think what I figured out about it during the pandemic of all things was that, to me, the reason why story-based emails and stories that are telling them a bit about you as the founder are valuable is because it's almost like you become a TV show to them. And they're invested in your story. Even if it's not like a continuous story, you just become a character that they want to know what's happening with. And a newsletter has a hard time doing that. Now, there are some exceptions. And I like to tell people that, you can do these emails that are kind of these updates. So a newsletter to me is an update where you're updating them about multiple things that have happened. That's the only reason you'd send a newsletter style. But make it a little bit fun or personality driven. Just don't send a very boring, dry thing. And again, find a theme that makes sense with whatever your nonprofit is and with what your personality is. But you could do something like that. And again, it's as simple as one of the people that I know that I work with, she has a program. She teaches people about needlepoint is what she does. But she's also, she's from the South. She's from Alabama. And so when she sends a newsletter, she includes a recipe. And it's like a Southern food recipe of some sort, right? It has nothing to do with their business, but it shows people something about her personality, something she likes doing that gives them a reason that it's like, okay, hey, this is something fun. Me, I'm kind of known for my rants. And so when I send newsletters, I have a rant, I have a tip or a piece of advice, I have a resource, and then I do a recap. So the recap of content it's the reason that I do these newsletters when I do them, but at the same time, it's not the main point. Most people are going to open it for the other stuff, but then they're going to get to it and say, oh, I should go check that out. But I think that's the key to do it, is just bring a little bit of personality to them.
Yeah. I actually had first time the organization had hired this executive director, or hired a executive director. And she had come to me and she was like, I am so overwhelmed. I've got to get this newsletter out. And she was having to do the header and the different sections and lay it out. And she's like, it takes me forever.
Yep.
And I told her, I said, let's try something. If it doesn't work, you can go back to this and we'll figure out how to streamline this. But let's try something. Let's just do an email to a friend.
Yep.
And tell them about what's going on in the organization. I mean, we pretty much incorporated all the different little blocks, but we did it in a story, in a email sort of format. She came back to me after that and she said, you would not believe this. It was so much easier to write. Mm-hmm. And I had people who told me they had found my stuff before this in their spam folder, but this got through.
Yep.
They read it. They opened it. She said, I've actually made money off this thing because people were starting to donate, and that's the only thing I've done differently,
Yeah.
So it works.
Right. And so it's funny. And you think about that, but so many people, this is where I feel like people are and programmed, I don't know if this is the right word, but we're kind of like programmed from what we've seen. And so we're used to seeing marketing style emails from companies. And again, let's just be clear. I'm American Airlines is like the airline that I've used forever. Do I ever get excited? Do I ever really read those? No, not unless I'm maybe going to look at a trip, but I see it and I immediately, if I just look over and see it in a preview pane on my Gmail, for example, I'm going to immediately know that's a promotional email. And the same thing, it's funny you mentioned it because I was just thinking as you were talking. So I think it was, I think it was during COVID when I was signing up for something. So I live in DC and the mayor's office sends a newsletter every Friday. And it's just kind of like, it's funny to me because I can see what they're doing, but I'm like, oh, I mean, I'll just tell you, it's never landed anywhere besides my promotions folder, even though they're not really promoting anything, but because of all of this formatting. Mm-hmm. Because the systems just know, oh, that's not really just an email from someone this person knows. That's some type of newsletter. And so, I mean, that's the other thing I tell people, and part of like trying to be a friend is really when I'm saying write an email like you're writing it to a friend, take that approach with the style, with everything. Because number one, the style, unless you're in a very specific industry, and nonprofits, I would not say is one of them, but unless you're in a place where being pretty really matters, mm-hmm. All of that stuff is just fluff that gets in the way of the message. Mm-hmm. It will distract your readers, but it also, again, I don't want to get into a big long discussion about deliverability because I can start using acronyms and those things that affect where your emails land: spam, promotions folder, updates folder, main primary folder, or otherwise. But just know this: the more that your email looks like it's a marketing email of some sort, the more likely it is that it's going to be in the bad place. If you want to be in the good place, which is the primary tab in Gmail or the equivalent in corporate, where it just doesn't land in any kind of traps, just send an email that looks like an email. Just plain. I mean, that's why I just send plain white emails. And again, my newsletters, we added literally just a picture at the top. So we have an image at the top and that's it when I send those emails. But everything else is just, it's just text. And so even on our stylized ones, it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. And doing that will help you, number one, get into the inboxes and stay in the right place. But also, I think people respond to it better because, again, it just doesn't seem as markety.
Right. Yeah. This is just a letter from the executive director of that organization you like, telling you what's going on.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, this is one of those little psychological things. It's just happening subconsciously. We don't realize it, but we have, because we see so many marketing messages now, and I don't even know, I don't keep up with the estimates because people talk about, it's hundreds or thousands in a day, but however many it is, that our brains have gotten pretty good at filtering that stuff out and identifying it and saying, I'm not going to pay attention. And our brains are basically doing what our DVRs do for commercials now, where we just kind of skip them. And so we're training ourselves to skip stuff that's an ad. And so it's not just that they're going to ignore the design, but if it comes with a design, they're more likely to simply ignore it entirely. Right. Versus something that doesn't look like that, they're going to just read it.
Yeah, I saw recently where we have to see something 27 times before it ever becomes on our radar. Because we get so many messages and we filter out so many, we have to see it multiple times before we even realize we've seen it,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind, right. I mean, and it's just, it's one of those things. I mean, in the old days, I think people didn't have to deal with this. Like marketers, nonprofits, you didn't have to deal with this as much because we weren't being inundated with messages like we are now. But now, because it's constant and because, I mean, just saying, if you go online and once you pick up on this stuff, it's funny because you'll start seeing stuff like there's this company that now, because I visited their website or did something, I mean, for the last 2 weeks or week and a half, I don't know. I mean, it's everywhere I go on the internet, I'm seeing those ads and, I laugh at it because I enjoy the marketing and trying to understand and see what other people are doing. But most people have become just blind to it. They just don't even see it. And so we have to understand that. And it's a challenge that old people, like people in the old days, didn't have to deal with.
Right. Well, Bobby, if people have liked what they've heard today, how can someone get into your world and how can they buy your book? Because this is the place that they need to go to learn this.
So you can just find me on Bobby Klink everywhere. So BobbyKlink.com. That's Bobby Klink is what I am on all the social channels. But if you're listening to this the week that it goes live on May 3rd, you said this is going to be the release date. This is the launch week. And so this week, if you wanted to grab the book, the ebook is actually on sale for 99 cents this week. So you can go to Amazon, Amazon.com, buy the ebook, I guess that's Kindle edition is what it is, but yes, the Kindle edition for 99 cents. But also, like, if you do that and you decide that you want a hard copy as well, and again, this is one of those weird things because by the time you're listening to this, I will have figured it all out, all the details and that, but it's kind of the future past tense, whatever it is. My team and I, we have some extras of our hard copies, and we're going to be selling those at a reduced price on a first come, first serve basis to people who bought the ebook. So if you buy the ebook for 99 cents, you'll be able to get one of the hardcovers from me if you wanted to, but only if you act quick. I don't know how long they'll last, honestly, and this is not a marketing ploy. Alicia can tell you I don't do fake scarcity and fake urgency, but we did an initial special edition print run, and I'll be selling those at a reduced price to folks who do it. So that'll be the way to do it. And then again, once you buy the book, there's a simple thing, but also hold please, BobbyKlink.com / I think it's just / email, but let me double check that before I say I think it's just / email. It is going to be a page, / email. It's a page that'll have a bunch of resources. So that'll be a place for you to go to get more information, to get samples. We're kind of thinking of that as the complement to the book itself.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that you go out and get a copy of this book. I have actually read it. I got an advanced copy and was able to get it read. And it's a quick read. I think it took me 8 hours total to read. So it's real quick. It's easy read. And you are the email person, my email go-to. So I always want my people to learn from the best. And so you are the best at this. And so I want them to go and buy that book and learn from you. And then if you have any questions, translating that book into how we can do this for nonprofits, I'm always here too. Yeah. So thank you. Go ahead.
One other thing we should mention, by the way, if you're listening to this in real time, and if you buy this in the month of May, we're actually having a 2-day virtual event that everybody who has bought the book by then will be able to attend for free, where we're going to dive into kind of doing some work. So there will be people there, like I'll be there, my coaches will be there. Some of the people who've been in my world a long time are going to be there and kind of be helping people start to make progress on the email. And so that'll be May 25th and 26th. And again, if Alicia is okay with it, one of the things I'll say is, that we'll figure out a way that if you wanted to say, hey, I'm a nonprofit person through Alicia, that assuming she's going to be there, which I think she will.
I'm going to be there. I wouldn't miss it.
We'll put you at the breakout table with her. So you'll be able to kind of, in the sessions with her, kind of be able to think about that and think through how do you translate maybe what I'm talking about for marketing businesses into the nonprofit world. So, but again, that's May 25th and 26th, and you get a free ticket if you buy the book by then. So again, even if you just bought the 99-cent ebook, you can attend this 2-day event about email for free.
That is awesome. That is a great deal. So run out, get the book on Amazon today. Don't wait, and get your email going. So thank you so much for being here, Bobby. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun. And I've enjoyed connecting with you over the last few years and just look forward to continuing over the years to come.
That's it for the Nonprofit Founders Club podcast. Hit subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. In the meantime, keep building your nonprofit so you can help those you are called to serve.